Hello, I'm Graham Elwood, and welcome to the Political Vigilante. My neighbor, he's playing music and I think hanging out with a girl or something. I don't know. I hope it doesn't bleed in. If it does, enjoy it. I want to talk about an article in the Los Angeles Times from Sunday, January 22nd. The lawsuit may threaten state climate program. Appellate court could soon rule on years-old challenge of landmark cap-and-trade policy. This is by Chris McGearian, excuse me. And it's basically talking about this. California is a very progressive cap and trade policy that basically charges companies if they're going to pollute. They have to pay like an extra fee, so it brings in extra revenue for the state and also encourages companies to not pollute, which is good for the environment. But it's bad for business. Brr. Every business should just pollute, then we have jobs. I wonder if there's any jobs that don't pollute. Here it is. With President Trump in the Oval Office, California officials are bracing for the possibility of a new administration will undermine the state's landmark policies on climate change, but the more immediate threat isn't coming from Washington. It lies in a lawsuit that has been slowly winding its way through the state courts. The 4-year-old legal challenge pursued by California Chamber of Commerce and a collection of business interests argues that the cap-and-trade program represents an unconstitutional tax. The system intended to create a financial incentive to reduce greenhouse gas emissions requires companies to purchase permits to pollute. So you might be like, well, Graham, I don't live in California. What does this matter? It doesn't affect me. Here's why it affects everybody. This is a very progressive piece of legislation, and this article goes into how Governor Jerry Brown, the governor of California, has gone to Quebec, and he's also even some Chinese officials. So people from other countries are looking at this very progressive legislation, especially now that Trump's in office, and it's very clear he's not going to do anything to help the environment at all. And I understand why people might not believe in climate change. And a friend of mine brought up a good point to me, because I think, and I've said on the show, maybe, I don't know, you're just nuts. But all of these institutions have been lying to all of us. The government has been lying to us. The government has been lying to us on numerous occasions. The media lies. The Catholic Church lies. Like, everyone is lying. Corporations lie. Or they're all just protecting their interests at the very least. So I understand when somebody goes, oh, the government says, or these so-called people are saying there's climate change. Well, I don't buy it. I get where that's coming from, but you have to understand that it is a reality, because it is coming from a myriad of sources. It's not just coming from one. It's coming from a bunch. And the American federal government didn't lead the way on this. But here's why this law is important. So Governor Jerry Brown and the environmental community see the lawsuit has been a ticking time bomb that could eliminate a key source of revenue and undermine a program touted as an international model for fighting global warming. Again, it's a progressive piece of legislature that other countries, other states, other cities, whatever, could adopt. State lawyers have chosen to diffuse the situation. State lawyers have the chance to diffuse the situation Tuesday in an appeals court hearing in Sacramento. That's California's state capital. A decision could be released within the next 3 months, but likely won't be the final word. The losing party can still make the appeal to the California Supreme Court. Either way, the result will ripple outside the state's borders as politicians around the world consider the best way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. California is trying to expand its program's reach by partnering with other jurisdictions. As I said, it's teaming up. This is how Brown has done. He's teamed up with Quebec 2 years ago, Ontario a year from now. And also California's leadership, along with northeastern states and other West Coast states, It's more important now than ever, said David Doniger, director of the Climate and Clean Air Program of the National Resources Defense Council, NRDC. That's, I believe, Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert Redford's place. The legal dispute surrounding the cap and trade program stems from its origin. So of course the companies that have to pay this are saying it was unconstitutional because it needs to be passed on a 2/3 vote of the California State Senate, and it wasn't. It was approved in 2006 by then Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, and lawmakers approved the legislation requiring a state to reduce its emissions to 1990 levels by 2026. Excuse me, to 2020. Then they tasked the California Air Resources Board to devise a plan to reach the goal. So the California Air Resources Board was created several decades ago because California has had a pretty bad smog problem. Now in the 70s and 80s, it was awful in Southern California. Because there's a lot of valleys, there's a lot of basins in California. So it's sort of desert. So there's mountains, and then there's like these valleys. So the air just sits there, like the San Fernando Valley, which is just to the north of Los Angeles, but it's still in LA County does that, and just the LA basin itself does that. But it has gotten a lot better over the last several decades because of all of this clean air legislation that has been passed. And China is obviously looking to this because China has, as I've talked about in previous videos, I took a train last year from Beijing to Shanghai. 5-6 hour train ride, the majority of it was through the Chinese countryside, and there was still plenty of smog. And the Chinese government decided to spend $111 billion in 2015 on clean air and clean solar. On wind turbine, clean air and clean solar. It doesn't make any sense. On wind turbines, well, basically on clean energy and infrastructure, like high-speed rail. But they are now the #1 manufacturer of wind turbines and solar panels in the world. So the state of California is worried that if this lawsuit passes, then it would undo everything that's being passed here. And so what has happened is, even if the state wins the case, the cap and trade program wouldn't be completely out of the woods because regulators created the program under legislation that set a target for reducing emissions by 2020. There are questions about whether cap and trade would expire once the date is reached. The big question is what comes after 2020, said Michael Ware, a Stanford law professor who focuses on energy and the environment. To erase that concern, Governor Brown has asked for lawmakers to pass, this is where it gets interesting, pass a new measure extending the program with a 2/3 vote, safeguarding cap and trade for the future. One piece of legislation has already been introduced, but negotiations are likely to be complex. It's one of the largest programs impacting the California economy, said Rob Lapsey, president of the California Business Roundtable, which represents the state's largest corporations. The stakes are huge. Yeah, these companies here, president of the California Foundation for Commerce and Education, a think tank affiliated with the Chamber of Commerce. Okay. In addition to the Chamber's original lawsuit, the Pacific Legal Foundation, which is a conservative group, yeah, be careful. Whenever there's that kind of people involved, it sounds fishy to me. If you live in California, pay attention to this. Contact your state representatives. The governor's office, obviously, but find out who your state representatives are. My name is Graham Elwood. Thanks for watching The Political Vigilante. Stay involved, pay attention. Politics are all local. Talk to you next time.